Trinas Choice, Chapter 14, Lisanna. On Monday morning, when Ms. Juarez announced that a seventh grader named Cipriano Zepeda had been killed in an accident over the weekend, the students in Mr. Cervantes' homeroom just turned to each other with shrugs and whispered, "Who's that?" Trina had figured no one would know it was Zipper, except for the teachers. So he was a little surprised when the boy next to him looked at Trina and asked, "Is that the kid who always wears that leather vest with the zippers?" "Yeah," Trina said in a tired voice. Up came the last image of Zipper slumping down to the ground, only to fade into a yellow body cloth. "What happened? Do you know?" Trina shrugged, then shook his head. The boy just shrugged too, and not much else was said about the boy who died. As Trina went to other classes, he heard some kids in the hall talking about what had happened, even a few mentioning Zipper by name. Coming into Coach Trevino's history class, Trino's stomach sank down to his feet. He just expected to see Zipper in the usual desk at the end of the first row, digging through his pockets for something, waiting for class to begin. To Trino, the desk in the back seemed miles away. "Hey, Trino, you okay?" Trino swallowed hard before he looked behind him at Coach Trevino. The man had always been friendly, even though Trino never did much homework. "I feel real bad about what happened to Zipper," Coach said, his big hand coming down gently on Trino's shoulder. "Were you there when he was killed?" Trino continued to play it safe. "I just knew he got killed, that's all." He didn't offer anything else, couldn't trust anyone not to turn words into lies and gossip. "If you'd like, I can give you a pass to the counselor, if you want to talk. I know Zipper and you are friends," Coach told him. "I don't need to talk to the counselor." Trino lowered his eyes and headed towards his usual desk in the back of the room. What would he say to a counselor anyway? Confess that everything was his fault? Describe when Zipper got shot? Only good thing would be that he could get out of class, but sitting someplace and just thinking about Zipper wasn't appealing. He had almost been glad to get to school today, to get his mind onto something else after a Sunday that had given him way too much time to dwell on Zipper's death. Trino sat down and made himself stare at the map that was tacked onto the wall beside him. He filled his head with names of Texas cities, rivers, and land formations. Anything to keep his mind off the empty desk behind him. Students came into the class talking and laughing about stuff like it was any other day. The tardy bell rang and Coach Trevino rapped his knuckles loudly on the teacher's desk. "I'm sure you all heard Ms. Juarez's announcement during homeroom period," Coach said, coming to stand close to the front desks. "Most of you probably didn't recognize the name Cipriano Zepeda. I'm sorry to tell you that it's Zipper." Trino took his eyes off the map and looked around the room. Students stared at each other. Some faces were confused, some surprised, others sad. A few turned around and stared at Trino and the empty desk behind him. "Do you know what happened, Coach?" one boy in the front asked. Coach Trevino cleared his throat. "I was told that he was shot by accident. He was with some older boys, and they tried to rob a car wash. The owner thought that they were going to hurt him, so he fired his gun, and it killed Zipper." At least Coach got his facts right, Trino thought. For Trino, history class felt weird without Zipper sitting behind him. However, walking to Mrs. Palacios's class for fourth period and not seeing Rogelio waiting by the fountain as usual made Trino's mood slip further into a sad, dark hole. He had stopped by Rogelio's house before school, and his grandmother said that Rogelio was still in juvenile hall, and if he got out, they were going to send him to that school downtown taught by the priests. It had sounded like Rogelio was going to be in jail forever. As Trino quietly walked into Mrs. Palacios's room, He immediately sensed something different in the students than those who had been in Coach Trevino's class. He was such a little jerk. No wonder somebody shot him, some girl with curly black hair said to anyone who would listen. Some boy jeered, "Hey, Zipper, got any bullets in your pockets?" And a bunch of kids laughed. Trino gave that kid a dirty look, but the boy waved him off, turned to his friend, and said, "You think they'll hang Zipper's vest in the trophy case by Miss Juarez's office?" Ignoring their stupid laughter, Trino went to his desk by the window and sat down. He felt like putting his hands around somebody's neck and squeezing away until his eyeballs popped out and a tongue that made awful jokes dangled out like a dead worm. "All he ever did was call me roach meat," one boy said loudly. "Now he's the one who's meat for the roaches. I hope his coffin has holes. Ha!" Trino was ready to pop up and hit him when Mrs. Palacios came into the room. Maybe he'd ask for a pass to the counselor so he could get out of the room. But he was afraid Mrs. Palacios would ask a bunch of dumb questions and all the other kids would hear stuff and maybe start making jokes about him and Zipper together. Mrs. Palacios stood in the center of her classroom and sighed. "I guess y'all heard about Zipper. Seems that Rogelio got into some trouble too. I hope you all think about what happened to these boys and learn a lesson of some kind." She turned her eyes right on Trino and said, "Some people don't get a second chance." He just sat where he was, feeling like everyone was tearing pieces out of him. He avoided looking directly at the teacher. Even when Mrs. Palacios asked him to give the right answer on a worksheet, he said the words and kept his eyes down. When class was over, all he wanted was escape. Maybe he'd drop out of school and work with Nick chopping down trees for the rest of his life. He walked hallways filled with students, but none of them spoke to him. He couldn't shake the black mood that filled him. Despite his mother's morning reminder to eat his free lunch because she wasn't sure there would be any food for supper, Trina didn't go to the cafeteria. Who would he sit with? Maybe kids would start talking about Zipper or asking Trina questions. Trina walked outside towards the basketball courts and cement tables. He found himself a spot under a tree to sit down. He just wanted to get his head clear. He stared at the group of boys shooting hoops, laughing and running. A group of girls sat on a nearby table, giggling, combing their hair, putting on lipstick and stuff. Like nothing had changed, except for what was moving around inside Trino. No telling how long he sat there, staring and sliding between his different feelings, when he heard a girl's voice say his name. "Hello, Trino. How's it going?" His body stiffened slightly before he relaxed at Lisanna's appearance. When she smiled down at him, he suddenly felt, for just a few seconds, like his old self. "Can I sit here?" she asked, pointing to a spot beside him. "Sure, Lisanna. Hi." He slid over a little so she could sit under the shade too. Lisanna sat down, then put a small denim backpack in her lap. "I was hoping I'd find you today. I've been thinking about you." Her words made him smile a little. "Yeah?" Her eyes lowered and she started to scratch her fingernails across her blue jeans. "I heard about Zipper. That guy was one of your friends, right?" "Yeah, he was." Trina shifted around uncomfortably. Would she remember that Zipper had called her Pizza Girl? Hector said Coach Trevino looked kind of upset when he told everyone about Zipper. "Hector? My friend, Hector. He's in history class with you, remember?" Trino shrugged, then sighed. "Sorry, I forgot. I don't know." Lisanna reached over and put her hand on Trino's arm. "It's okay. We don't need to talk if you don't want to. I can just sit here with you, Trino." That's when he looked at her. Lisanna was so nice. And here she was, talking to him, just sitting with him. This all felt so much better than that lonely feeling he'd been carrying around all day. And he saw the concern in her eyes. He wondered, can I talk to her? Can I trust her? Lisanna, you ever have a friend die? Sort of. My mom died 2 years ago. Lisanna kind of smiled. She was my friend. Trina's hands trembled. Her mother? That's too bad about your mom. How did she die? A drunk driver hit her car. That's when Jimmy and I went to live with Abby. Lisanna leaned back against the tree trunk, her shoulder pressing against Trina's in a comfortable way. Poor Abby. She'd just gotten married, and here come Jimmy and I to live with her and Earl. He was pretty nice about it, really. I hate to think what would happen if Abby and Earl didn't want us. Her calm voice and close presence began to seep through that brick wall Trino had built around himself the past few days. He never expected a girl like her to be his friend. I haven't told this to many people, Trino. Not even Janie knows this. But my mother died on her way back from the mall. She was shopping for me and Jimmy. She died on our birthday. Trino had never heard anything so awful. He had the craziest urge to put his arms around Lisanna. What was wrong with him? He didn't even like to hug his mom, and he always pushed Beto or Gus away when they wanted something like that. Yet, what she had just told him deserved more than, "Gosh, I'm sorry." She had told him something that even her best friend didn't know. He swallowed hard, then said, "Lisanna, nobody at school knows this, but I saw Zipper get shot. I was supposed to be with them, with Rosca and those guys, but I got there late. Too late, I guess." He felt her body get stiff, then she lifted herself away from his shoulder. He was scared to look at her. He had admitted so much, maybe too much. What would she think of him? Ugh, Trino. Lisanna ran her fingers back through her wavy hair. "I told you those guys were trouble. You're so lucky you're not the dead one. Do you realize that?" Then she sighed and shifted around to her knees so that she was looking straight at him. "Somebody told me that Rosca and the others were trying to rob a car wash. Is that what you were going to do too? Why? Tell me why." He didn't know how to respond to her questions. Her voice didn't sound mad, just filled with disappointment. But sometimes there were good reasons, and her opinion of him mattered. Of all people, Lisanna had to understand Trinas Choice. "I wasn't going to do it at first," he told her, trying to be as honest as he could. "But then my mom lost her job, and my little brother got sick, and we had no money for the medicine. So I thought that Rosca could help me get some money. I just thought we'd hit a couple of machines and take off. I didn't think some man with a gun would be there." She just stared at him with wide open eyes. Her face was so still, he had no idea what she thought. So he told her the rest of it. All of it. Zipper got shot because of me. He and Rogelio never would have gotten mixed up with Rosca if it hadn't been for me. The guys wanted a part of the job so they would be cool. He gave a sarcastic laugh. I thought I could trust Rosca. I was so wrong and stupid. Now Zipper is dead, and Rogelio will have a police record. It's all my fault." Trino stopped then, knowing he had said more to Lisanna than he had told anybody. He found himself hoping that she would understand him, that she would be someone he could trust. He needed a friend, someone like Lisanna, to care about his feelings. Slowly, Lisanna's face came back to life. Her dark eyes gleamed as she leaned her face slightly to one side. "It's not all your fault, Trino. You didn't force Zipper and Rogelio to go to the car wash with Rosca, did you? They made that choice." She gave a little sigh. "After my mom died, I blamed myself a lot. Maybe if I hadn't wanted those stupid paper plates with the purple unicorns on them for my party, maybe she wouldn't have gone to the mall that day. Once when I was crying about it, Abby reminded me that I was lucky I wasn't riding in the car with her. You were lucky too, Trino. Maybe you need to remember that when you feel sad about Zipper. Trino shrugged his shoulders together because he didn't know what to say. Lisanna sat back on her heels. When somebody dies, it's really awful, isn't it? He just nodded, only to feel sudden embarrassment as a loud noise grumbled from his stomach. Lisanna giggled as Trino slapped his hands onto his stomach to quiet the noise. I guess you're hungry, huh? She lowered her eyes and opened up her backpack. Boys are always hungry. Abby swears that Jimmy eats enough for 3 people. She rummaged through the pack and then said, Sorry, no food in here. That's okay, Lisanna, he said. He felt so glad to be sitting with her that even an empty stomach didn't bother him much. Oh, but suddenly her face brightened up like a light bulb had flipped on inside her. Could you come over to my house on Saturday? I'm going to use that pizza coupon I won from Ms. Juarez. Abby said I can invite some friends over. You already know Hector and Jimmy. I'll probably invite Janie too. Are you busy this Saturday? Trino felt so excited that she wanted to include him that it took a couple of moments before he remembered his job with Nick. His earlier happiness was flushed away with disappointment. Ah, Lisanna, I can't go. I got a job helping a man cut down trees. My family needs the money, and I made a promise I'd help him. He looked into her face, hating the way her smile faded away when he gave her the bad news. Oh, Trino, that's too bad. But I know how it is. I have to give up stuff too if I get an extra babysitting job. That's how I get my money to spend. Lisanna started to smile again. I'm saving up money for a book I want for Maggie's store. She's got Jorge Morelos coming to her store in 2 weeks. Maggie showed me his book. It's got a blackbird carrying a rosary in its beak. Have you seen it? Trino had to laugh. Yeah, I've seen it. It's about some curandero. I read a little of it last time I was in Maggie's store. He couldn't believe it. Trino Oliveres was actually talking about a book he had read. Oh, then you have to come with me when Morelos comes to the book basket. We both need to hear him read Trino. They stayed together under the tree until the bell rang. Trino asked if maybe they could walk home together so he'd know where she lived, and she laughed and said he could. And then Trino went back inside the school, feeling like maybe it could be a place where he belonged.